As we gather on this Yom Kippur, we find ourselves at a crossroads of memory and reflection. Jonathan Safran Foer once wrote in his book, Everything is Illuminated, Jews have 6 senses: touch, taste, sight, smell, hearing, memory. For Jews, memory is no less primary, he wrote, than the prick of a pin or its silver glimmer or the taste of the blood it pulls from the finger. The Jew is pricked by a pin and remembers other pins. It is only by tracing the pinprick back to other pinpricks, when his mother tried to fix his sleeve while his arm was still in it, when his grandfather's fingers fell asleep from stroking his great-grandmother's damp forehead, when Abraham tested the knife point to be sure Isaac would feel no pain, that the Jew is able to know why it hurts. When a Jew encounters a pin, he asks, "What does it remember like?" These words resonate deeply as we stand here today, looking back on a year filled with challenges, losses, and profound changes. They remind us that for us, as Jewish people, memory is not just a recollection of past events, but a living, breathing part of our present experience. Today, we explore the layers of our memories and the complex tapestry of our grief. We often think of memory as a simple snapshot frozen in time, but it's far more intricate than that. Our memories are not just records of the past. They are the lens through which we interpret our present and envision our future. This layered experience of joy and sorrow, of celebration intertwined with grief, was brought into sharp focus for me on a warm summer evening in Regent's Park. The day had begun with a morning here at the synagogue with Rimon, not just in prayer, but in the joyous company of our community's children, watching them learn and grow together, a poignant reminder of the freedom that we cherish to practice and pray and nurture our future generations. As the day transitioned, I found myself watching an outdoor production of Fiddler on the Roof with my own children, acutely aware that my ancestors' family's story mirrors that of Anatevka in many ways. As the joyous wedding scene unfolded, with the community singing the poignant sunrise, sunset, I felt swept up in celebration, reflecting on the passage of time and the bittersweet nature of change, not just in the play, but in my own life as a parent. And then suddenly the moment was shattered by the violent pogrom scene. In an instant, celebration can turn to mourning. How the weight of history and the fragility of life are ever present, even in our happiest moments. My mind couldn't help but draw a connection to the tragic events at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. The fictional pogrom on stage and the all too real attack at Nova became superimposed in my mind. The pain of our ancestors, my own family's history, the fresh wounds of our community, blending together in a complex tapestry of emotion. This experience led me to reflect on the nature of our collective and individual grief. In my studies of grief this past year, I've come across the concept of a grief map. It's a powerful tool to help us navigate the complex terrain of loss. Imagine, if you will, a landscape with hills and valleys, rivers and forests. Each represents different aspects of our grief journey: the peaks of intense emotion, the valleys of numbness, the flowing rivers of tears, and the forests where we might feel lost or find unexpected beauty. But here's something crucial to understand. Our grief map isn't just a single landscape. It's more like an atlas with multiple maps overlaid on each other. Each loss, each sorrow we carry creates its own topography. At any given moment, we might find ourselves at different points on these various maps. Picture this. On the map of one grief, we might be scaling a mountain of anger, our emotions raw and intense. Yet simultaneously, on the map of another loss, we could be in a peaceful valley of acceptance. Our journey through grief is not linear or uniform. It's a complex interplay of our various experiences of loss. What's more, these maps aren't isolated from each other. They intersect and influence one another like rivers flowing between different lands. A moment of healing in one area might unexpectedly ease the pain in another. Conversely, a fresh loss might reopen wounds we thought had healed, leading us back to difficult terrain we thought we'd left behind. This interconnected nature of our grief journeys echoes our Jewish experience of memory. Just as we are pricked by a pin and remember other pins, one grief can trigger or transform how we experience another. It's a profound reminder of the layered nature of our emotional lives. Brené Brown, renowned for her work on vulnerability and human connection, offers a profound insight into grief. She writes, "Grief requires us to reorient ourselves to every part of our physical, emotional, and social worlds. This reorientation touches every aspect of our lives, explaining why our experience of loss, be it of a loved one, a job, or a dream, can feel so disorienting. By recognizing grief's all-encompassing nature, we can begin to understand its impact. If we can name our grief and acknowledge how it's shaping our world, we might navigate this reorientation with more compassion, gradually finding new ways to engage with life after loss. Think about your own grief maps for a moment. Where do you find yourself today? Are you scaling a mountain of anger on one map while wading through a river of sorrow on another? Or perhaps you're in a meadow of memories on yet another, filled with both bitter and sweet recollections. Recognizing where we are on each of these maps can be the first step in navigating this complex terrain. This has been a difficult year for many of us. The situation in the Middle East weighs heavily on our hearts. The images and stories we've seen and heard have shaken us to our core. But for many, it's not the only loss that you've faced. As we approach the Yizkor service, I want to encourage you to honor and hold your feelings of grief around the events since October 7th, but also to give yourself permission to feel the rest of it. Was there loss in the form of bereavement, a cherished family member or friend who is no longer with us? Or perhaps it was the loss of a job, a sense of security, or a relationship that defined a significant part of your life. Each of these losses deserves acknowledgement. Each deserves space in our hearts and in our community. Each is a pin that pricks us, reminding us of other losses. I'd like you to take a moment now and consider a loss that you felt this year. It certainly doesn't need to be the most significant one if that feels too raw or challenging. If you were to paint this loss in an abstract way, what would it look like? What colors would you use? Would they be dark and somber or surprisingly vibrant? What would the brushstrokes be like? Quick and angry, slow and deliberate, or perhaps a mixture of both? My exploration of grief theory this year has taught me something profound. Let me take a minute to share with you some of the most prevailing grief theories and how the understanding of grief has changed in the last few decades. Many of you will be familiar with the groundbreaking work of Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, who in 1969 introduced the 5 stages of grief model: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. This model, originally developed to describe the experiences of terminally ill patients, has been widely influential in helping many to understand the complex emotions that accompany loss. However, it's important to note that Kubler-Ross later emphasized that these stages are not linear and that not everyone experiences all of them. David Kessler, who worked closely with Kubler-Ross, later proposed a 6th stage, finding meaning. In his book, Finding Meaning, the 6th stage of grief, Kessler argues that discovering meaning can transform grief into a more peaceful and hopeful experience. This might involve honoring the deceased, appreciating the time we had with them, or recognizing how our loss has changed us for the better. Kessler's work reminds us that even in our deepest pain, there is potential for growth and transformation. Another important development in grief theory is the continuing bonds theory, proposed by Dennis Klass, Phyllis Silverman, and Stephen Nickman in 1996. This theory challenges the earlier notion that successful grieving requires letting go or moving on from the deceased. Instead, it suggests that maintaining bonds with the deceased is a normal and often healthy part of successful grieving. The continuing bonds theory proposes that we don't resolve grief by severing our ties with the deceased, but by finding new ways to continue our relationships with them. This might involve talking to our loved ones who have passed, keeping their memory alive through stories, or making decisions based on what we believe they would have wanted. It's about integrating the memory and legacy of those before us into our ongoing lives. This perspective aligns beautifully with our Jewish traditions. There was a time not so long ago when too strong a connection to those who have departed was viewed as unhealthy or as a sign of unresolved grief. The prevailing wisdom was that we needed to move on or let go. This shift in understanding is particularly relevant to us as Jews. Our tradition has always emphasized the importance of memory, of honoring those who came before us. Consider how we light a yahrzeit candle on the anniversary of the loved one's passing, or the way we recite Kaddish, not just during Shiva, but throughout the year of mourning and beyond. These practices aren't about letting go, but about transforming our relationship with those we've lost. When we gather for Yizkor services, we're not just remembering, we're actively continuing our bond with those who have passed. Even the custom of placing stones on graves during visits is a tangible way of saying, I was here, I remember you, our connection endures. These rituals provide a framework for us to honor our loved ones, to keep their memory alive, and to allow our relationship with them to evolve over time, embodying the essence of continuing bonds in our grief journey. These practices aren't about clinging to the past, they're about weaving the threads of our history into the fabric of our present and future. They're about tracing the pinpricks back, understanding the depth and complexity of our experiences. Let's return to Fiddler on the Roof for a moment. In the opening of the second act, we see the same newlyweds whose marriage had been violently interrupted, but now they're embracing their new sewing machine, which was very exciting for them and a symbol of hope, even in the face of upheaval. The scene resonates deeply with our own experiences of finding hope amidst sorrow. As we watched, My sons were tapped on the shoulder by a friend they had met at Al Netzer's Kadima. Their excitement at this mini reunion felt symbolic, a reminder of the connections that persist and the community that sustains us, even in unexpected places. This is resilience, our ability to celebrate life, to maintain our traditions, and to find hope, even as we carry the memories of past sorrows. Like the fiddler balancing precariously on the roof, we too balance joy and sorrow, memory and hope, individual experience and communal history. Our freedom to gather, to learn, to remember, these are the threads that bind us together, allowing us to face our grief collectively and find strength in our shared experiences. Our narrative can shift from one of loss to one of affirmation and continuation, from isolation to connection. Even in our darkest moments, there is potential for light, and the webs of painful memories and grief are often followed by threads of comfort and hope, even if they're hard to see at first. I want to invite you to revisit that mental painting that you made for yourself. Look at it closely in your mind's eye. Can you find a spot, perhaps in a corner, or maybe right in the center, where you can add a lighter, warmer color? Even the smallest detail representing some warmth or comfort. Perhaps it's the power of their legacy, the values and lessons that they left behind that continue to guide you. Or maybe it's the wisdom gained from a job loss, teaching you resilience and adaptability. It could be the strength you found within yourself, strength you didn't know you had until you were tested by loss, whether that loss was a loved one, a relationship, or a dream you had to let go. For some, it might be a time that you reached out to someone who has died and felt their very real presence, or a gentle smile that comes unbidden when you remembered a shared joke or a moment of tenderness, or the bittersweet nostalgia of revisiting a place that holds memories of a relationship that has ended. Adding this warmth to our grief painting doesn't diminish the loss. It doesn't make the pain go away, whether that pain comes from death, divorce, career setbacks, shattered trust. But it reminds us that our memories, our grief, our healing, they're all part of the same canvas. They coexist, creating a complex, beautiful, and deeply human picture. Each brushstroke, whether it represents a tear shed, a lesson learned, or a moment of unexpected joy, contributes to the rich tapestry of our lives. As we move through this Yom Kippur, let us remember that our grief, like our memories, is layered. It's complex, it's personal, but it's also shared. In this sacred space, we hold each other's pain, we honor each other's memories, and we find strength in our community. When we recite Yizkor shortly, I encourage you to embrace the complexity of your emotions. Feel the sadness, yes, but also allow yourself to feel the love, the gratitude, the connection that transcends physical presence. Let the names and faces of those we've lost wash over you, not as only a wave of sorrow, but also as a testament to the richness of the lives that we've shared and the legacies we carry forward. Healing means integrating our losses into the ongoing story of our lives, finding ways to carry our loved ones with us as we move forward. It means allowing joy and sorrow to coexist, recognizing that our capacity to feel deeply in both directions is what makes us human. As we stand here today, fasting and reflecting, let us also look forward. May this year bring healing to our layered grief. May we find the courage to name our pain, the strength to carry it, and the wisdom to recognize the moments of life that shine through even in the darkest times. And above all, may we always remember that in this community, in this family, we never grieve alone. Your pain is seen, Your memories are honored, your journey is respected. Together we will navigate the complex landscape of loss and emerge, not unchanged, but unbroken, carrying the warmth of memory and the strength of community with us. Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be sealed in the book of life for a year of healing, growth, and peace. We continue on page 379.